Hello, dear listener. Welcome to People We Know, a podcast for my friends and family, about my friends and family. If you're looking at the YouTube screen, you might notice we have a super cool logo that I made in about 5 minutes on Canva. So, shout out to me for doing that. And if you're one of my artist friends watching this, just think about how much better you could do that for me. Anyways, me getting my artist friends to do the stuff for free. But today we're talking about music therapy, and so I kind of am guest today, which was kind of cool for me. And you'll notice this is the longest episode yet, so that says everything you need to know about me. Welcome to my family members and people who ask me what music therapy is, and I say, you know what? I have a link to me talking about it for 2.5 hours if you're interested in that. So if you actually made it here, that's awesome, and I hope that you enjoy. I'm going to make timestamps in the YouTube description so you can jump around and only listen to the parts that you're curious about. And I'm also talking to my great friend Will today. William currently works at UT Austin as a lab technician doing work in molecular biology. He's also a visual artist and musician with a penchant for melancholic drivel, which is so true. Also, I think that Will is a natural at podcasting. If you listen to him, like in this episode, you'll understand what I mean. I think he should definitely start one of his own. He asks all the good questions. He has just the right amount of verbal nodding. And also a very nice podcasting voice. So, but if he does start one, please stay listening to this one, okay? Don't. And anyway, a little bit more about me than usual is that I did my undergrad degree at UT, the Texas one, and I'm doing a undergrad and master's program at Appalachian State in music therapy now. And my primary instrument is French horn, though mostly now I play guitar, piano, and I sing. I have an album out called Tuesday under my band's name, which is Corporate Kickball. And I'm writing new music, actually, and Will is producing it with me. So, anyways, enjoy this episode. Bye.
Hey, Will.
Hello. Hey, Sally.
Will, you're my, is producer the right word?
Yes.
Will is, paying me money to produce my music.
Yeah, I need people will not let me touch their music for free. Well,
usually what?
before I was your producer, you actually helped me out a lot with some music. You played my music, so
I played in your music video, which I would love to see.
Yeah, it'll be done any day
someday.
now. Any day now.
Yeah, we recorded it.
No, don't say.
2 summers ago. And I'm told it's always about a week away. So, and it's the gift that keeps on giving because it's always something to look forward to.
That's right. That's exactly right.
When you think about it. But it isn't really, it's going to be a good video someday. Maybe next week.
Yeah, it is really good. It's getting colored and any could be ready any day. But I'm not. I think it's not really about me today. I think.
Oh yeah, that's so true. Well, normally I start by asking the guest their favorite book. So I figured we could both answer that question today since I'm host and guest-ish today.
Yes, and I'm also host and guest.
Yes.
Okay, I'll go first.
What's your? Okay, yeah. Please.
A few books come to mind immediately, but one book that was recommended to me by a good friend of mine, Free Play.
Okay.
Title is Free Play.
By
Steven Nachmanovich.
Whoa.
Or Nachmanovich?
Russian?
Nachmanovich? I don't know. I know he's a violin player. And the book is about improvisation, but it's kind of like a meditation on how musical improvisation is really just an extension of the improvisation that you're doing on a daily basis in everything that you do. Like conversations are kind of works of improvisation, and he just takes that idea and dives into it, and it's a really beautiful book filled with a lot of beautiful images and metaphors. And I think anyone who's creative would enjoy it, but really the whole point is that the point of the book is that everyone does exercise creativity, in some way, because we are, we don't live scripted lives.
Yeah. That sounds really interesting. I have put it on my Goodreads.
It's gospel
It's
for
got
me.
nice cover art.
Yeah, I wonder what that is. It looks like
A house?
I don't know.
With a dinosaur in it. Well, you said a few come to mind.
Fellow.
Name 5. Just kidding.
Okay, I'll also say House of Leaves.
My brother told
House
me
of
to
Leaves.
read that.
Your brother's got good taste.
I know, and I told him I'd read it like a year ago, and
it's kind of a daunting book. I don't really know if I want to say that much about it, because it's really best to just dive in. But it's twisting and winding, and there's lots of stories kind of weaved together. So it's a totally unique reading experience. That's what I'll say about it. Okay. And then honorable mention, I really love Crime and Punishment, little Dostoevsky.
Ooh. Okay.
I read that earlier this year, and it was one of those books that was sitting on my shelf for a long time, and then it started kind of like singing to me in the middle of the night. I don't know. So do you ever do that where you buy a book that you're not really ready to read, and then
it's kind of like ready for you?
And that was one of those, like I said, I felt like it was time to read it, and I don't know if it's the case that the book was really meaningful to me because I felt like it was calling to me and that I was ready to read it, or if that it would have been meaningful to me whenever I chose to read it. You know what I mean? But I just love the way that the characters are kind of a reflection, or that the way it's written is that these characters are like sort of reflections of like political and apolitical ideologies, and these still, like, a big theme in the book is like, well, I don't know if it's a theme, but a lot of the characters are sort of playing with like nihilistic ideas, which is like, I'm no expert, but I think that nihilism was sort of came to the forefront through a Russian literature of that time, or like a few decades before. And so it's like nihilism is kind of like this poppy, cool ideology to be thrown around in Russia in like the late 1800s, and there's obviously a lot of opposing ideas too, and while you have the story of this main character, which is kind of about this just internal writhing, it's laced and layered with all of these characters who represent like political ideologies, and that was really fun for me after I read the book to go back and read and figure out what was going on. I don't know, just one of those books. Okay, your turn. You go.
Okay, you're very well read.
I wouldn't say so.
I mean, those are big boy books. But I would say right now, when I think of my favorite book, I think that it is Breakfast of Champions by Kurt Vonnegut, which I know is kind of a red flag.
Is it?
I don't know. I feel like it's giving like libertarian millennial man, like, I don't know. It's kind of but I just love it. I
What do
really,
you, yeah, what do you love about it?
I love, so it's like this is, so Kurt Vonnegut, I believe he died in like 2007, and he wrote books from like mostly the 50s through the 70s, I believe. Could be wrong about that.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, his biggest one is Slaughterhouse Five,
Mm-hmm.
which is about like him hating war and how unfair everything is. And anyways, he's like very funny, but it's so dark. All of his books, like I don't know, they're heartbreaking, but they're hilarious. And he just talks about things in such a frivolous way. Like it's kind of like a sci-fi feeling. Like
Mm.
I think Galapagos, one of his books is written like as if you've never heard of humans before. And so he just kind
Oh.
of he talks about like, oh, and yeah, and we like to shoot each other and stuff, and like sometimes we'd have, Christmas, which was a time where people would, I don't know, and like he just explained it in such funny ways that like I don't even know how to explain it, but he kind of like approaches everything like that. Like all of his books are like um just pointing out like how arbitrary some of the things we do are. But anyway,
Yeah.
Breakfast of Champions is like I think the last book that he wrote, and he has like this long foreword at the beginning where he's like, "This is all the gunk in my brain, and I have to get it out." And so that's what this book is. This is just all the goop and the gunk inside of my brain, and there's a
Mm-hmm.
lot of bad takes in this, and there definitely are. There are some really anti-Semitic takes in there,
Ooh.
and yeah, um,
Do, do you,
what?
do you, I formulated this question before you threw in the anti-Semitic bit, but do you kind of like revel in the bad takes? I mean, is that something that you enjoy in like an author, someone who really has no holds barred?
Well, I think like in Kurt Vonnegut's case, I think it is like I read it as like a late life, like I'm going nuts and like these are just kind of like my intrusive thoughts.
Mm.
I don't really know that he like believed um or like truly hated Jewish people or black people because he talked some bad things in his book about them too, and women. Honestly, I'm not making him out to sound like a very good author. Um,
Yeah, well, I mean, it sounds like you're saying if it is the case that it's, it, I don't know, I haven't read the book, so maybe I shouldn't say, but
mm,
I think, um, you asked like I don't know if he believes these things, and I think that's like that's such a it's such a difficult problem for a creative person if they're
mm,
truly if the aim of their pursuit is to really be authentic or to actually or if you're the kind of artist that you have the goal of presenting yourself as you are.
mm-hmm.
It's difficult to when you know that these things that are swirling inside of you, they're not necessarily things that you condone, but they are something that you've absorbed through the environment.
Yeah, for sure. It like he has. It's so hard to explain like the tone that he has because it's very ironic and it's very like um I don't know, like describing or I guess kind of like a satire of like America in general,
Mm.
and especially in Breakfast of Champions, like I would say capitalism in general. It's like a satire on that, and so uh, yeah, there's definitely some bad stuff in there. Um, I couldn't tell you if it's like intrusive thoughts or if it's like supposed to be part of the satire or if that's what he really believes. But I will
Mm.
say that it is currently my favorite book. Other than that, it's not just all like that. It's like there's my favorite book quote is like this part in the book where he's explaining, I guess, yeah, like America and like things to, I guess, aliens. And he's like, this is a gun, and sometimes people would put holes in other people with it. And it
Right.
just, yeah, and he's like, sometimes people would just put holes in pilots that were supposed to fly to one place, um, and get them to fly another place. And it's like, and then this book also has like drawings all over it, like his
Oh.
just doodles. Um, and like one of them, like at the beginning, he's going through like how he's like, this book is just bullshit. Like it's just the gunk in my brain. In fact, here's my drawing of an asshole. And then he draws like an asterisk, and all of his books have like the asterisk on the side. And anyway, but unless you have read that book, you don't know that that's an asshole on the side of all of his books.
Oh
Or at least
man.
like the most recent like printing of them.
That's so funny. It's
So
like
yeah.
his
And he yeah, it makes me feel like I don't know, like better than everybody else because I'm like I know it is.
because you know what an asshole
Yeah.
looks like.
Yeah. And then
I
like yeah, I can't go too much into it without spoiling it, but it's really good. I have not made it sound very good, but it really is.
no, I believe you. Kurt Vonnegut's one of those authors that like I have two of his books on my bookshelf, and again, it's like
Which one?
Slaughterhouse-Five and I can't see it right now. I forget the other one, but yeah,
Okay.
Slaughterhouse-Five. Right, that's like the Kurt Vonnegut book.
That is
Um,
the I think yeah.
what was the? I can't remember the other one, but yeah, those are a couple books. That's like a guy you know that you know you should read. There's like he's not like a he's not like in the William Burroughs crowd, right? What are those guys called? The
I don't know who William Burrow is.
no, but oh my gosh, On the Road. Um,
I don't know
wow,
what that is either.
my brain's failing me. Anyway, I guess not. But
I
yeah,
don't know if he's considered like a classic author, if that's what you're asking. I think maybe Slaughterhouse Five is considered like a classic
yeah,
at this
I
point.
yeah no, I'm there's just like this there's like some movement. It's like bums of the 50s. Hold on, actually,
Oh,
hold
okay.
on. I'm
Well, I
totally
think
yeah. Sorry,
while you're
go on,
looking
go on.
for whatever it is, I would say that he like if you want to read a book that's gonna make you feel smart and you know get you back into the habit of reading,
Hmm.
I would go for Kurt Vonnegut for sure because they're really short and they're hilarious and they're written like conversationally. Like I wouldn't jump right into like
Mm.
Jane Austen, you know what I mean? Because to me, like I have to read her paragraphs a couple times just because it's so old. And Kurt Vonnegut's like pretty recent, like 60s, 70s. You know,
Yeah,
it's like
yeah.
not hard at all, and it's funny.
I Yeah, I that really does give me motivation because I've been wanting to read those books, and maybe that's all I need to actually
You
pull the book
should,
off
you
the shelf.
should.
Yeah. I was talking about the beats, like Jack Kerouac
Oh,
and William Burroughs, the
oh,
Beat
like
generation.
okay, I was gonna say like the beatniks, but I didn't know if
Yeah,
that
the
was gonna be a
Beatniks.
stupid thing to say. Yeah,
Yeah,
like
that
Ned
is what I was.
Flanders' parents in The Simpsons are beatniks.
Yes, yes. So I guess he's not though. He's not a beatnik, I don't think. Right?
I'm not sure. I don't think so,
I
but
know.
I'm not
Th-
sure.
this isn't literature class, you know.
Yeah, I know. We need to. Okay, what do you know about music therapy?
Oh, good. Let's jump right in. I really don't. I don't know. I mean, I imagine that it's like I have experience in talk therapy, so I imagine it's sort of trying to get at the same kind of things with music. That is, what are the things that, um, how can you be introspective in a meaningful or in a efficacious way, perhaps. I don't know.
What does efficacious mean?
Efficacious meaning like, that the therapy is actually, helping you in some way, that it's actually doing.
Oh, like effect. Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
That's a good word. You are well read.
Well, that word. Anyway, I love that word, but is that
okay? Anyway, that's okay. The answer is yes and no. So, well, actually, the answer is yes and. So it is. My friend Anna, shout out to Anna, gave me like such a good definition of it, and I don't even know if this is hers or if she got it from somewhere, but because this is like defining it is so difficult, which we're gonna get into, but her definition is like, think of any type of therapy, so talk therapy, speech therapy, occupational therapy, physical therapy, and then imagine like music as the therapist to that. So like using music in expressing, in talk therapy, let's say. Like, of course, it's like, I guess music is more the co-therapist, I would say. So it's like there is a person there, like the expert, the board certified music therapist. And then they use music to kind of, help you with whatever it is that you're working on. So,
yeah, what kinds of things are people working on, or like what is it that that makes sense. Like but why, what is it that people are working on, and why, what is music therapy specifically good for, or is it, I'm sure is it more broad than that?
So much. So that's so it's used in like all sorts of populations, but I guess let me give you like the textbook definition, or I think this is from the American Music Therapy Association. I think that's where it's from. It's also from my notes from Intro to Music Therapy class.
Yes.
Music therapy is a reflexive process wherein the therapist helps the client to optimize the client's health using various facets of music experience and the relationships formed through them as the impetus for change. As defined here, music therapy is the professional practice component of the discipline, which informs, and it is informed by theory and research. So basically,
all right.
using music to reach some other goal. Music education, right? That would be using music or, something else that's not music to get for the goal of getting better at music, right?
Right.
Music therapy is using music to get better at something else.
Okay, man, that I mean, my that makes my brain go off in a million different directions. But
it's hard to conceptualize, I know.
Well, yeah, it's what is it? Well, okay, first of all, what does that reflexive piece in the definition refer to? Like reflexive, like I mean, like that meaning that the music is supposed to like evoke something that you like, that you're not fully in control of,
Here it means it can change based on what the client needs. So it can be adapted to any number of clients. We see babies in the NICU all the way to like people in end of life care. So
and
it needs to be reflexive because you're not going to do the same thing with all of those people.
Okay. So reflexive is not about the client. It's actually more about the therapist.
Yeah, for sure.
Reflexive.
I mean, the client will change too, but it's all about them. Like you change to fit them and suit their needs. And I also want to say kind of here at the beginning that I am not an expert on this, okay? I'm studying it in school, okay? But I am not board certified yet. That'll be next year this time, hopefully. And but the point of this podcast is it's called People We Know. Look, it's not called Experts in the Field, okay? It's called So anyway, just wanted to say that.
Plus,
I could get things wrong.
Yeah. Well, I find it so helpful to test my knowledge by explaining things to people. It's
Yeah, seriously,
very.
I had to like look stuff up and like be like, you know what? I really did need to know that. I should have like.
This is like I'm playing a video game against Andy and he's way better than me, and so I'm constantly getting feedback as to how much I don't know. uh
What game is it?
Super Smash Brothers.
Oh, yeah. Okay. I was gonna say if it's
Yeah.
F-Zero, I'm pretty sure I've beaten him in that before.
Really? Dang.
Yeah. And I remember
Okay.
because it meant a lot to me.
Yeah, I feel like that's you have to get him to sign an affidavit or something after that.
Anyways, so music therapy is hard to define because it's transdisciplinary, meaning that, like I said, we work with speech therapists, we work in schools, we work in hospitals, we work in hospice care, we work privately. Like it's, and it's completely different in all of those places. It's just hard to define in the nature of itself, I guess. Like it's just kind of a wide thing, and then it's multifaceted, and it's art, science, and personal, like clinical. So that's kind of hard to wrap your mind around. It's diverse. It's still developing. It's not well known. People may not take it seriously, and explaining it without seeing it is really difficult.
Yeah, because like you're saying, it's so personalized, right?
Yeah, exactly. Um, yeah. Like we set goals for clients. Like one of my goals for practicum client, I'll just pick a random for an example, was an adult with intellectual and developmental disability. And she would like get up, it was very sweet, in the middle of anything and just go across the room and give her friends like a big hug and a kiss. And not everybody always wanted that. And so our goal was keeping our hands to ourselves. And so, she really liked, what's it called? Paint It Black. And so we had a song that was like, oh, how did it go? I can't remember, but it's like, I want to hug you, but I keep my hands to myself. So anyways, and then she used sign language. So we used like the sign for, or at least I don't know if it was the official sign for it, but the sign that she knew for keeping your hands to yourself. And then like that sort of song, like anytime we saw her get up, we would be like, ah, da, 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 da. And so anyways, so we set goals like specific to that, to people, right? And so like for her, I was watching like how often is she getting up during a session, and how often does she sit back down, like when I like intervene, with the
Yeah,
song.
and so you're all. It's also on the backside of it. You're doing like a quantitative assessment as
Totally.
well.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then we do like we measure their progress, and we look at it like percentage wise, like maybe I'll pull up like later, I'll put on the screen like some of my data. I'm not sure if I can do that or not, but obviously I wouldn't share any names.
Yeah.
But yeah, like I had one client in memory care who his goal was like recall one anecdote from his life, I think once per session. And sometimes, depending on the person, it might be like twice per session she'll do this, or 4 times. And then you record how often they do that, and you make notes of like, oh, they really liked this song, and they responded really well to that, or when they got to play this instrument they did it more. And then by the end of the semester for us, but I think real music therapists, it's like probably by year basis or whatever, I don't know, or however long they're seeing the client for. You like count them all up and then do percentages, see if they like improved or maintained or didn't improve. Then you kind of assess and make new goals and go from there.
Yeah, I mean, that sounds a lot like, what you might do if you were like a primary care physician, like, but even more, I think even more attentive, love my GP, but sometimes I feel like I go in there and she just kind of like slaps me around a little bit and she's like, all right, you're good to go.
Yeah.
which is fine, you know. But
Yeah.
but that's, I mean, so you mentioned, okay, are these people, so you mentioned a couple different specific like groups of people that you work with. You mentioned babies, you mentioned uh, maybe like adults with intellectual disabilities, or you also mentioned I guess in the memory that would be like an older person who has like memory impairment.
Yeah, so I actually wrote down like a big list of kind of the main areas that I've heard of music therapy going to. And I kind of did it from like youngest to oldest. So NICU is the earliest one. Actually, I think there are people that work with like pregnant people with music too.
Whoa, they're like playing music to the unborn child.
Yeah, I mean, okay, I will say that the Mozart baby stuff is kind of bullshit, but
I don't know about the Mozart baby stuff. I don't want to derail
Mozart
the
doesn't
conversation.
necessarily. Okay, here's the thing about that is that Mozart doesn't make your baby smarter. You spending time with your baby and making music with them makes them smarter. You know what I mean?
Okay.
Like
Yes,
that
yes.
does improve their like neural plasticity and like they are, you know, and it's not just Mozart. It can be Beyonce. It can be whatever. You know, it doesn't have to be like adult classical musician. Anyways,
I can get my baby smarter by playing you know, like Ariana Grande.
yeah, it's. I think you know the most important thing is that like it's like your relationship with your baby, right? So music that's important to like you or your culture.
Yeah.
That's great for the baby.
Yeah, it's like Jacob Collier's mom like playing him Bach and going like, "That's a B, right? Sing me a B natural. Sing me a B natural." Right? When he's like,
yeah, like yeah.
Sorry, he's like, "Feel that vibration? Do you feel the vibration?"
You feel it? Yeah. Yeah, kids love that, and their brains are so spongy, and they yeah. I will say I think there is evidence that calming music is like preferred for like I don't think like super loud heavy metal is like necessarily the vibe.
Right, or like Flight of the
I think that's
Valkyries.
kind of why we go for like, you know, lullabies and that sort of thing. I'm not 100% on that, but I think I read an article about that for a class one time. But anyways, so yeah, NICU, babies, and then like early childhood or like early intervention. So like kids who like the parents or the teachers or whatever suspect might have like an intellectual disability, but they're too young. Like I think you have to be diagnosed at 2 for autism. So like that sort of thing. And then school. So kids with intellectual disabilities or any other needs that are in exceptional children classes, which is what like special ed classes is, I guess that's like the new name for it, EC classes.
Okay. Yeah.
Or like mental health. I think there's a group of people, or there's a practicum site at my school that's like I think 6th grade girls with mental health needs, and it's like a group music therapy thing, and I think a common thing there is like starting a band with kids.
Whoa.
Yeah, and then mental health with adolescents through seniors, so you know adults. And I've seen one of my professors worked in a prison, and that's another big area. And then, of course, medical music therapy, traumatic brain injury would be in medical. Guided imagery in music. Oh, I think I need to do an entire separate episode on that, but that's like the music therapy that came out of psychedelic therapy.
Okay.
So that is like super interesting.
Yeah.
And then, of course, we have older adults without memory care needs, but just, you know, older adults with maybe physical needs or social needs, and then memory care, and then we have like hospice and palliative care. So yeah.
Yeah,
there's
I mean,
more, but those are the
right. Well, it sounds like there's potentially infinite case use cases.
Mm-hmm.
It does seem to me that maybe, I don't know much about psychedelic therapy, but the idea, like, I know that there's some like uses now for PTSD and stuff like that, where you have like a guided experience with a therapist, right? And it seems like maybe that's like that with the music therapy, it's a similar dynamic where you have a therapist and then you're having this experience with the music, that, depending on what it is that you're there in therapy for, the music, the experience with the music is what is supposed to be transformative, and the therapist is there to facilitate that.
Yeah, that's pretty much spot on, Will. It's like the way I don't know, it felt like very radio host. That's exactly right, Will. But it is like, it's GIM. I honestly do want to do like an entire separate episode on it because it is like so cool. But I will tell you that basically your brain on music looks like your brain on LSD, but less intense. So,
Okay.
of course, but it's like all the same areas, but obviously just less activity. So people have found, I've never tried psychedelics, but I have tried GIM, and people have told me that it's very similar. The difference is like on a psychedelic trip, like you don't have any control over what's happening. Like the trip just kind of happens, and you have visions and you see things. And then in GIM, it's more of like active imagination. And you get into this like half dream, half awake state, and you listen to music and you just kind of talk about like the stuff that you're seeing in your imagination, basically. And dude, it's so cool. And like you can get better at it and it becomes like more real. Like I go like every 2 weeks to GIM
Whoa.
therapy, and I started like super super skeptical because it just sounded like way too woo-woo for me to be. I was like, I
Yeah.
don't know. I was like, I've never been able to be like hypnotized or anything. Like I'm always in my own head. But then like once I realized like that's the point, that you're in your own head, and it's like whatever you make up like matters. And then once I realized like it was a skill too that I could get better at, I've had like some really great I've had like, I don't know, I've been able to smell and taste things literally just laying in my bed listening to music with the therapist, telling me,
Wow.
or like staying with me. And yeah, it's like super cool. I've like
God.
swam in the ocean in my imagery.
God. And you feel
Yeah.
like the ocean, you feel like the cold ocean, and you feel
It
the
doesn't,
wind.
it feels like a dream. Like it doesn't feel like I'm really in the ocean. And I've always like, especially the first couple times I did it, I was always like, I'm just laying in my bed making stuff up,
Right.
And I definitely still am. I'm not ever really like fully gone, I guess, into the imagery. I think some people are able to do that. I'm not sure that I'm that person.
But it's a fine line, right? It's a fine line. How it's kind of as powerful as you allow it to be in some way.
Yeah. I think definitely. I don't know. It might be like my inner psyche or something is not ready for me to like let go completely or whatever, or I just don't want to. But that's the great thing about it too, is like it's way safer obviously than psychedelic therapy. And people remember it, which is another problem that they found with psychedelic therapy, is people would have these great trips and like have these epiphanies, and it would last 7 hours and they wouldn't be able to remember most of it.
Yeah.
So anyway, but I'm gonna do an entire separate.
Yeah,
that's just like a whole can of worms, and I have so many.
So crazy fascinating.
Yeah, but anyway, so okay, I want to say a couple things about what music therapy is not, because there's a lot of misconceptions.
Okay. Yeah.
So, it is not sound therapy, which I don't know too much about, but I believe that's like a yoga thing with like the sound bowls. I'm not sure.
Okay, like 438 hertz or something.
Yeah. I think like sound baths and that sort of thing. I mean,
The fundamental frequency.
Yeah. I'm not sure. I know that there are sound therapists, and you know, I'm sure they're great, and I'm sure that what they're doing is great and therapeutic and beneficial. However, the difference is we have, board certification and all that. And I kind of hate to, like, I don't know, be that guy. But music therapy, it is just more rigorous to become a music therapist. And I think we're qualified to, like, do more, if that makes sense. And
Yeah.
I think
It
you
sounds like a
can
much
just be a sound. I don't know if you have to take any sort of course or something to be a
Okay.
sound therapist. I'm not sure about that. But I just know that that's not what we are. So if you've
Okay.
ever heard of sound therapy, or you're like, oh, I go to like my yoga teacher's a sound therapist, like that's different. And it's a whole other, I don't know what they do.
Okay.
I would like to meet one.
Yeah, so that would be a good episode right there.
Yeah, honestly, just me and a sound therapist. And then it's also not just, singing songs for people. I mean, it is, but it's like not just that. Like it is based on empirical research, and you have to go through rigorous training to do it. It's not just like walking into a room where somebody's dying and being like, well, how about I play y'all a song and we can talk about our feelings. I mean, certainly like a music therapist could do that, and honestly playing songs for people is beneficial and therapeutic, but we do like way more than that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know, it's not that, but I guess I kind of like, I don't know, I get a little bit resentful of just hearing like oh, you just go in there and you play songs.
Yeah, well, because as you described earlier, it's like there's just so much more intentionality behind it, and you're collecting data in order to like sort of you're collecting data to actually make the process work better.
Yeah. It's like just because it's cool and fun doesn't make it not clinical and scientific,
Yeah, seriously. I mean, I don't know. I have a bone to pick too with people that have it seems like there's a kind of like a cult of science point of view where science is this like monolith that is a bunch of serious people with like their brows furrowed, and there's no creativity. It's just pure logic. And I think that science is a highly creative discipline. So well, science is many things, but yeah, I think good science is very creative.
Yeah, and that's kind of like why, like, I don't know, it is a bit difficult because music therapy is not well understood, and so we're kind of constantly like defending it and being like, it's evidence-based.
Yeah.
There's research, we're not just like making stuff up. It's real. And I think like sometimes, like, my professors have talked about this a little bit, like we spend so much time defending ourselves and hyping up our profession that we forget that sometimes it really can just be singing to people for fun. And if that's the only therapeutic benefit, that's still worthwhile.
It's a funny situation. Like, it's a funny situation where you have to say, well, it's not just that, but obviously it can't, like, if the situation calls for it, it can be that. But that's the whole point of the that seemed to be the point of your defining it, was to say, well, this thing is actually really hard to define. And the cool thing about what you do, it seems like to me, is that you are going into every one of these situations, a wide range of situations, and being very, aware of what specifically you can do using music.
Yeah. So yeah, I really love it. I guess I'll say like my experience so far. So right now, I so I did my undergrad degree in music education. So
Hmm.
I didn't have a music therapy undergrad degree. So I am at a program now where I'm getting an undergrad and a master's in music therapy, and it'll be like a 3.5 year total long. So basically, because I'm not missing, like, I did all the music portion basically in my undergrad, but I didn't do the psychology, the healthcare, the anatomy, like all of those classes. So anyway, so I'm
Yeah.
I'm like a half undergrad, half master student right now, and then I will do next starting next summer, I'll do my 6 month internship. Um, and I'm gonna go to a hospital. I don't know which one yet, but I've applied to only hospitals because that's what I want to do. So right now,
Yeah.
anyway. And I'll do 6 month internship with a music therapist supervising me, and then at the end of that, I'll sit for the board exam and take my board certification exam, and then I'll be Sally MT-BC, which means music therapy board certified. And then I'll do another semester and a half and I'll have the master's. So you have to, I think, like other therapy professions, you have to have 1,200 hours of like clinical experience. So
Mm.
that's what I think our practicum is. And then we do our internship and then the board certification exam. And you have to have the bachelor's degree too. So, yeah.
So, I mean, why? Why music therapy? Like, well, why did you go? I mean, it sounds like you wanted to teach music education. How'd you go from music education to music therapy?
So, yeah, I definitely I knew that I wanted to do music. I actually started in music performance. And then I was like, I don't want to be by myself in a practice room all the
Hmm.
time.
Well, I should just say, let me just jump in and say that Sally is a
Oh.
very talented musician and singer and composer. Okay, go.
Thank you. And I like how you differentiated musician and singer.
Well, they feel different to me. I don't know.
I have a lot of singer friends that hate. But thank you. But thank you. I'm like, what? But thank you. That's very sweet. And so are you. You're a wonderful musician. I love making music with you.
Well, thank you.
But anyways, so yeah, I started in music performance, and here's the thing about it is that I never really practiced. Like, even before, like, I mean, I practiced. Like, when I first got my horn, like, I was so excited, and I practiced all the time, and I was definitely very into it. Like, I was doing, like, the musical orchestra, and I was in orchestra outside of school, and I was in lessons, and I was in band, and I was in marching band, and, like, I was just doing, like, basically everything that I could do, you
Yeah.
know? But I didn't really practice that much, to be honest with you. I mean, like, I did, and but, and what I was like, well, surely, I'll go. And this sounds so, I know that this sounds so pretentious, but I swear I'm saying it in a way of like, it's all an illusion, and not in a way of like, I'm better than everyone else because I didn't practice. I, like, truthfully, I don't think that you have to practice as much as people say that you do.
Okay.
And that just might be a hot take.
Yeah. Can we get
This is kind of
make that?
this is
Can you put
maybe
that?
going into my,
Put that one at the beginning of the episode. But
I know. Like, this is kind of maybe even a different episode, but like, I was like, surely at some point, it'll get to where like, um, people can tell that I'm kind of just faking it, like sight reading, and I'm sure people could, and I think my lesson teacher definitely was like, okay, you like didn't. But I was like, but I'm still good enough to be in like the UT band,
Mhm.
and I'm still good enough, and I could, if I wanted to. I probably would not have been good enough without practicing to actually go get an orchestra job, because that's really crazy hard. But I was like, this is crazy. Like, why are we like yelling at kids all the time to practice when I got this doing kind of like I think I just was playing so much in ensembles that I always like I kept my chops up, you know what I mean?
Yeah, well,
And
it sounded like you put yourself in a, maybe you weren't practicing on your own a lot, but you were doing four different musical,
yeah, I
you
guess
know,
that was maybe
and
more it, but it's I don't know. And then yeah, it's like why are we not like encouraging that rather than kids to just like lock themselves in the practice room for 6 hours? Like that is so to me, and here's my hot take, that is unmusical. That is robotic in my opinion. And this is my hot take. And I know that that is going to ruffle feathers, but it's true. I don't know. I just think that that's like not how music should be enjoyed personally.
yeah, I totally
For
agree.
me, for me.
Well,
I guess there, yeah.
I agree. I mean, I didn't have any formal musical training outside of, seventh and eighth grade band.
You're in band.
In seventh and eighth grade,
What did you play?
the clarinet.
Okay.
I played the clarinet and I was first chair.
Whoa.
But I was also the only clarinet in the band, and and they put me in the flute section, and the flutes did not like that I was the first chair. Like it was really messed up because I was the first chair of the flutes as a clarinet.
Oh.
Um,
Oh.
so I was hated in the flute section, um, but I was just gonna say that you know, like music for me is about feedback, and I learned, for me, music became, when I started playing with my friends, like I wanted to play music again because my friends were in bands or whatever, and I'm like, okay, I want to make contact, like I want the feedback. I want to be, I want to communicate. You know, you're participating in a type of communion there. I think it's like really, really special.
Yeah. I think, yeah, maybe that's like a better way to put it is like, I wasn't interested in performance music. Like, I mean, I love performing, but I wasn't interested in like that being my career.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, you know, the people that are getting performance degrees, which is what I was doing, that is what they wanted to do. They wanted to spend all their time in a practice room and like just be the most technically proficient euphonium player in the whole world, you know?
Yeah.
And I was like, that's really not my jam. And I think like in one of my music history classes, we learned about participatory music and the difference between that and performance music. And the idea of participatory music is like literally like every culture ever has, okay, that's not true, I'm sure. But a lot of cultures have some kind of participatory music. I mean, like if you think of like Irish drinking songs or like tribal dances, like music is used for community and medicine and all sorts of other things besides kind of the way that I think I was raised seeing it, which is like you pay money and you go sit in the audience and be quiet and watch someone else do the music to you.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And the only way to have access to doing the music is to go be the person doing the music to the other people. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So,
I had
like,
music
I
done
guess,
on me.
and I, yeah, and I think when I changed from music performance to music ed, I don't know that I really had that figured out yet. I just knew that music performance wasn't quite right. And of course, we didn't have music therapy at UT. So I went to music ed, because we also had a really good music ed program. And so I was like, okay, well, I want to be like less lonely. I want to be with like people, I guess kids, and like teach them music and, you know, give them what I had and like maybe. And I remember thinking like, I'm going to incorporate music therapy into my like classroom. You know, I'm going to
Yeah.
like, I'm going to be like, you know, we're going to do cool stuff that's not about like winning competitions or whatever.
So you
And
had
then-
you had some conception of music therapy then.
For sure, yeah. And then eventually, like, I got far enough into music education, and I kind of remember with that thinking too, like, well, at some point we're gonna get into like, you know, the not forcing kids to get better at their instrument all the time. But that was kind of we were. Like that was kind
Mm.
of like that is the point of music education, is to help someone get better at music. And that's a beautiful thing. And I realized like I actually don't want to. Like I don't know, because to me I never cared that much about getting better at my instrument. I just wanted to do it all the time.
Right.
Like I wasn't that interested in being like the best. I just wanted to do it, and I wanted to do it with my family, and I wanted to do it with people who didn't know how to read music, and I wanted to do it with people who couldn't play an instrument or didn't, you know. So then I got as far as student teaching, and I lasted a week, and then I cried for 20 hours straight on the Friday of the last day there, and I quit student teaching. And I had already been applying to music therapy grad school at that point, and I just kind of like honed in on that. I was like, I am not going to be a teacher. That is just not for me.
Yeah, what happened? What, you were working at a school?
Yeah, and honestly, that's a whole other episode too.
Okay.
It was a
Okay.
wonderful school. They were great. It was just, I think the culmination of like, oh my God, it's like actually about to start to happen. Like you have to be a band director now. And I was like, um. So, anyways, and I think like all of this time growing up through band, like I loved band and I loved music, and I used to play with our piano, and like my grandma taught me a little bit of piano, but mostly I played with it as like a toy.
Right.
And
It
like
is a toy.
yeah, for sure. I remember like I used to think that the lowest note on the piano was a boy and the highest note was a girl, and they were in love, and they would only get to be together if I would sit there and like plonk on them so that they could like sound, which I'm sure my family loved. But anyway, I
So
growing up, like I noticed. Wait, what were you gonna say?
that's so lovely. Anyways, go on.
Yeah. um, I'll just say that like I have a soft spot for people with disabilities,
Hmm.
and like growing up, like they were in band because legally they have to let them in band, but it certainly wasn't like designed for them.
Hmm.
Like I
People with
worked,
disabilities. Okay,
yes,
okay.
like and I just noticed like, the only way to get access to music is to be in like band or orchestra, or go to like guitar center and start taking lessons, or be in choir or something. Like it's like a class like that, you know.
Yeah.
Um and there's totally kids who like can't do that or don't want to, or it's not as good of a quality for them as it is for kids who are naturally good at or can naturally afford lessons, you know,
Yeah.
for that sort of thing, which was me. So I was kind of like feeling this guilt of like, I'm like really enjoying this and having a great time because my parents can pay for me to have a great time doing this, and because, you know, I have a good ear. Um, but there are plenty of other kids my age who are like not getting to do this, and they would love it. And anyway, so I guess that was just kind of always in the back of my mind. And like I definitely like in music ed, like I shadowed and like worked, or I guess did like practicum, I guess, at all sorts of schools. And I saw all sorts of like stupid Texas band director things of like, in my opinion, like neglecting the kids with disabilities.
Mm.
And I think, you know, it's not like anybody wants to be that person, and I don't think it happens on purpose. I think people just don't know what to do. And I think that they are focused on winning, because at least for my high school, that was a matter of like keeping your job was whether your band was winning. Like I think my band director almost got fired once because we hadn't gone to state in a long time. And you know, I think that just some kids get swept under the rug. And so um and then I also, when I was really really little, I was in the hospital for a little while. Like I think like 2 weeks. Um And I guess like when I started to think of where I wanted to go for music therapy, like what kind of populations I wanted to work with, the hospital kind of kept calling to me, because I think that I would have loved to have like music therapy sessions while I was there because it's just scary and like you kind of don't understand what's going on and you know, needles and
Yeah.
scalpels and like I don't know. And I found doctors wearing like cartoon characters like kind of creepy. I know that they do it to like make kids happy and I think it works. I think that maybe I was just like a really weird existential kid, but like something about like seeing Dory on a scrub cap like threw me off. Anyway, um
It's like some kind of
so anyways,
carnival.
that's kind of
Yeah.
where yeah, these are kind of like the things that have led me to want to do music therapy and the things that have led me to wanting to be in the hospital. I
Mm-hmm.
think like the thing about music therapists is like they are 100% there for the client. Like we study healthcare, but we're not certainly not qualified to even like diagnose anything. So we're really just there to do whatever the client wants to do or whatever they're referred for. So if they're like working on like strength or something, like we're, you know, they're helping them beat on drums, you know, or something. And
Yeah.
I don't know, I really like the idea of kind of being the person that I would have really liked to have had on my side when I was in the hospital when I was little. Um,
Yeah,
cause I don't know.
it's hard to
It's
think of
definitely uncomfortable.
a uh what part of it is uncomfortable?
Well, I mean, it was uncomfortable to be 4 years old, like in the hospital.
Yeah, yeah. I mean,
Yeah, it was just like I think adults like feeling sorry for me all the time, you know, and like looking
mm,
at me like I was sick, which I was, you know, but it was like I kind of just wanted to like play and stop thinking about how sick I was, which was like foreign to me because I didn't really feel like I had a tumor. So it wasn't like
mm,
I like felt pain really.
yeah.
I was just like mostly chilling, but I had to do like this surgery, which was like a scary foreign concept to me. Um, and yeah, I think, you know, I really want to do it and be the person who has at least been there. I don't think I can say that I understand how the kids feel, but it's a familiar feeling to me at least, I
Yeah, like somewhere deep or maybe not even that deep. But I mean, it's hard to
guess.
it seems like yeah, it's that seems like a very valiant I mean, motive. Like I do you think is it important for you in your life generally to feel like the things that you do um you know that you can kind of find a story to them or find meaning in them?
mm, I think so. I think like I like for things to make sense. Yeah, I think I like to find meaning in things and for there to be a nice story.
Yeah, I I don't know. I ask because I think that to me feels like, at least in talk therapy, which is the kind of therapy I'm familiar with, um, that feels like something that a good therapist, well, that feels like a therapist who can help you make sense of the things that are happening to you, because ultimately maybe things don't make sense in some larger more objective way, but how you carve your own little stories and how you make sense of the world, how you build your own meaning, that's kind of that's something that therapy really allows you to be more intentional about.
Yeah, for sure. Um, I had written down like why I wanted to do music therapy, and one like idea that I had that I forgot to say is that I, especially in college, I guess, I hated the concept of like you never stop getting better,
Mm.
which is like I don't know. Like, I know that that's supposed to be encouraging, but I guess, again, I was a very existential kid. And I hated the idea of being like, I'm never going to be done. Like, I'm never going to be done getting better at this. And, like, to me, because I guess I didn't want to be a professional musician, the idea of, like, you're always going to be getting better at this and you're always going to have to keep working on this. Like, I was like, why do I want to spend time getting better at something that's so arbitrary? Like, I think the beauty of music therapy is, like, you get to use music to get better at something that means something to you, which for some people is, getting better at their instrument.
Right.
For some people, it's like getting their speech back after traumatic brain injury, or I don't know, getting better at talking to women after, like, I don't know, being referred for, like, I don't know, anger management or something. Yeah. Or just for mood elevation,
That's what I like music for.
Yeah.
or
Mood elevation.
Yeah, or mood, mood. Sometimes music for mood depression. Even I'm not a big advocate. I'm not gonna advocate for that, but sometimes you need to hear that song that's gonna help you, like, really sit in your feelings a little.
Yeah, I think, that's the thing. For in music therapy, we have something called the ISO principle, which I can't remember who coined that, and I don't remember if that's specific to music therapy or not. But it's this idea that, like, if Will, you're my patient, and you're coming in, and you're, like, let's say you're depressed today,
Depressed.
or you're, like, feeling, like, down, and, like, you are just not in the mood to do, like, a happy song, like, we're not going to do a happy song. Like, that doesn't make any sense. We're going to go in with something that matches whatever you've got going on. And I think that's why you like songs that bring you down, is because when you're down, like, that's the validating stuff that you need to hear. You need to sit in that and process it. And the way that you're naturally doing it, Will, you're processing it by listening to the music and, like, giving space to the feeling and letting it, happen.
That's why I've only listened to Elliott Smith the last month. Yeah, no, it's true. I always felt like I had a relationship with music that was not right. Like, that was not the right one. Like, I couldn't easily talk about, albums, or even I didn't have, like, a knowledge about the music, and I felt like I felt like sort of guilty about that, like, oh, I just kind of collect these songs, and I like these songs, and I don't really know what albums they're on or when they were released or whatever, or even the artists. Sometimes, I mean, this is like, music wasn't, I think I wasn't as interested in the cultural milieu that the music emerges from, although I am. It's just that for whatever reason, I didn't care so much about, like, the encyclopedic knowledge. I just it was only about, okay, like, do I want to listen to that song again? Like that was always the barrier of entry for me. It was like, I only ended up listening to songs that I could listen to again and again, probably because they were tapping into something, like, and maybe they helped me. I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, maybe something something one of the, like, older grad students taught us was making an ISO principle playlist. So she did this with her, like, adult psychiatric inpatient people. And I think it's such a good idea. And you take a graph. I guess it's just like a positive, direct linear positive graph, right? Y equals mx plus B
Mm-hmm.
type of, just a line going up into the top right corner. And like in the bottom left, you write like your current mood, and in the top right, you write the mood that you want to be at. So it doesn't have to be like depressed at the bottom and happy at the top. It can be anxious at the bottom and neutral at the top.
Okay.
Or it can be really angry to slightly pissed off at the top. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
it can be as micro or as macro as you want. And then you take, you put a song that encompasses how you're feeling at the bottom, and you put a song at the top that encompasses how you want to feel, and then you put a song in the middle that is the marriage of those two songs, and then you take the middle song and the bottom song and you marry them. And you can keep doing it as much as you want to until you have as long of a playlist as you want. And in theory, like, you can listen to that playlist and you can replay or skip songs as you like and go from the feeling you're at to the feeling you want to be as you listen.
What a nice idea. I mean,
I know.
I think about this. I mean, this may sound like a very obvious observation, but it's kind of easy to forget that the way you feel, your mood is mostly a direct response to your environment.
Yeah, totally.
And it sounds like what that exercise is trying to take advantage of is the fact that you can control, you can control your environment by creating a nice sort of flow of music that's going to help kind of transition you, even if you don't feel it. It never feels like you can come out of a mood when you're in it.
Yeah.
And
yeah, for sure.
and it's always like, but then right, maybe as soon as you take a step outside, then you're like, oh, the sun's hitting my face, and now I feel a little different, or and
yeah.
Music is one of those things. Like you can totally, like you said, it could be micro, but having the knowledge that you can actually sort of transform your mood, that's kind of comforting to me.
It can be empowering, and it I mean, who doesn't like to make a playlist, and that's something too where it's like you don't necessarily have to talk about your feelings. Like, that's another beautiful thing about music therapy is there's not as much reliance on talking. The clients can be completely nonverbal. They do not talk, and they express things that other people, like, I have seen plenty of times, like, people express things and communicate through music, and their family is like, we didn't even know that they could, like, say that, or that they haven't smiled this much in, like, when we just talk to them. But it's, like I said with the brain, like, music just accesses more of your brain than anything else. Like, it's actually really crazy. Like, there's like a graphic that I made that I love where I just looked up, like, brains doing different things. And, like, the brain doing a math problem, there's, like, a bunch of activity in, like, one or two spots. But they're kind of small, but there's a bunch of activity there. And then, like, reading is kind of a similar story. Even, like, a brain having an orgasm. It's, like, kind of a similar thing. It's a bigger area, and it's, like, of course, like, the parietal, I believe, lobe, where, like, what's it called? The strap above your head where all of your body parts are. And there's, like, a big circle of activity, like, kind of where sensation is.
Okay.
And reading a book, same story. It's like, it's just, but when you look at the brain on music, it's like the whole thing lights up. And so if you think about people who have damage or, like, delays in different areas of the brain, who normally, like, math is really hard because it's in that section that they're damaged in. when you make math musical, you know, it might access a different part of their brain where they really like thrive in.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
music is can be very mathematical, right? If you
Yeah,
take that
totally.
approach.
Yeah.
And like you said, I
And
think
yeah.
it can music does touch everything. It's, I mean, that sounds so silly, but
It does. And like I think, I mean, there are other um like art therapies, I guess. Like there's dance therapy and art therapy are the ones that I know of.
hmm
Um and I don't know too much about them. I just know that your brain on music is like a really beautiful thing. And I think people forget that, like, I mean, who hasn't like been moved by a piece of music? Like, I just don't think that there's a person that exists that doesn't like music. I think that people have music that they don't like, music that they do like. Um, but I don't know. I think I who hasn't like felt something to like the score of a movie that they love, you know, or
yeah,
cried at a first dance at a wedding or something like that, you know. And it's like, of course, that's like we should be able to use um that power, I guess.
yeah. I'm
Anyways.
yeah. Well, okay. I'm actually I have this is slightly off the track we're going on here, but
No,
I do
please,
have a
please.
question. I'm curious about your opinion on this. So, um, talk. Music changing your musical environment can change your mood, right? But something that I noticed starting starting 5 or 6 years ago when I was, let's say 5 years ago when I was starting at UT as an
Mhm.
undergrad,
Mhm.
um, is, everyone on campus, not everyone, but the vast majority of people who are walking around on campus, they all have their earbuds in, they all have headphones on.
Mhm.
Um, and of course, I've done that too. I've walked from here to there with earbuds in. That's like, I mean, starting with the Walkman, right? You have
Mhm.
the the ability to impose your own soundtrack on the world.
Mhm.
And I always felt like a bit strange about that like there are 20,000 people walking down Speedway, the
Mhm.
main road going down the middle of campus, and most of the people are not experiencing the sort of shared soundscape of that space. And I don't know, I have kind of a doomer feeling about that, like that
Mhm.
we're that we are moving towards a very segmented and fractured like existence. Like we don't experience things simultaneously anymore. I don't know, do you have a feeling about that? I know it's only
Mm.
loosely related to music, but
No, I mean, yeah, I mean, you're totally right. I think definitely, like, I don't talk to people in waiting rooms. Not that I ever did, because I think I'm young enough that it's always been like the phone age.
mhm.
Um, I think, I think music, like anything else, sometimes, well, I don't know. I
It's
think you sometimes really do need it, and I think sometimes you don't. And I think, I'm not sure.
I know that's a bit of an existential or
I know. Well, because I think that is music, and I think it also goes into like phones, which is, I think, like
yeah, it's more, I think it's
a related issue.
yeah, it's more about
Yeah.
like technology, like personal technology, because you could be listening to a podcast or an audiobook, whatever. It doesn't, I mean, it's
Yeah,
just the
yeah.
idea that we are increasingly creating our own personal worlds that we don't have to share. And I actually think, I mean, I wasn't trying to say anything about music, right? Because I think music is one of those things, like we were talking about earlier, where that's you want to play with other people. I mean, it's like you're saying, it's so much the experience of playing in a room with other people and finding your space in an arrangement and you know, interacting with other people musically, that's like the exact opposite of that kind of fragmentation. So I don't know, it's a weird thing, like music is simultaneously like highly personal and extremely collaborative.
Yeah.
And I can
Yeah,
love.
definitely.
Yeah.
I know exactly. I'm like, I've been imagining Speedway in my head this whole time. Like,
It's just it's like it's a little unsettling, you know. I want to. It's like if I broke into song on Speedway, I would want people to join me, but they wouldn't hear me probably. Or the
High School Musical.
yeah. Like, or I was biking past the golf course the other day, and someone was playing music out loud on the golf course, and it was like, what was he playing? It was dedicate yourself and you'll be living in the Hall of Fame. Yeah. You know.
Yeah.
and I got to, like, you know, blare a few lines of that out at him, and that was like, it's kind of a silly example, but when the music, when you're sharing that experience, like even just a stupid example like that, you know, he like looks at me and flashes me a smile, and it's like, well, that's
or like a nightclub, you know, or
yeah
I don't know.
Yeah, like yeah, I went to an 80s DJ set, or a dark wave 80s DJ set the other night on Friday.
What does dark wave mean?
I don't know, dude. I don't know. People
Okay.
People throw genres at me, and I like the way that one sounds, so I remembered it, but I could not tell you.
Can explain? Okay, but you would know it if you heard it. Okay.
Yeah.
Word.
But yeah, like you're like, you know, you're dancing like you do. The music demands it.
Yeah.
And you're like, and then you're like making eye contact with people, and it's
Whoa.
well. That's like a situation where you can, and it's like, yeah, we're both.
Oh yeah.
We're both going. We're both. This is vibrating both of our bones right now, and that's cool.
That is cool. I do love that, and I think like yeah, I remember like one of my classes. It was just like piano class basically, and class with all women, and it was one of my first classes at Appalachian State. And I had just come from like super like dude bro dominated, and I loved all of them. I loved all of the dude bros at school. They were wonderful, nice people. And I had just, but you know, kind of like, anyway, like me and the only other girl got confused all the time, even though she was literally Filipino, like, you know, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
So, anyway, so like, I just remember sitting in this class, and like the first day, or maybe it was the second day, like basically that class, like we would just go home, learn a song, like a pop song, and bring it back to class and play it for each other, and we would all sing along, and that was like the class.
So fun.
It was so fun, and I just remember like there was something about like a group of people singing, and like we all sang in the same octave, and it was just like, I just felt so amazing, and I was like, oh my god, these are all people that are studying the same thing as me, and like think the same things that I think, and aren't like feeling weird about studying music education when it's not right for them, and I don't know, and it was just like, it just like felt so good to just like sing in a group. You know, and a lot of people have that experience at like churches and stuff too, or You know?
Yeah, that was my first musical experience.
Yeah,
Um,
it is for tons of people.
yeah, I used to blare. I used to sing as loud as I could at church. So I found my range.
I love that. That's great.
I actually.
I used to be embarrassed. I'd been really quiet.
I mean, I was an attention whore, so
Okay.
that was a natural place for me. And I remember actually, like, I always tell this story. It's not gonna land without the visual component probably, but I went to all boys Catholic school, and so we had like our Friday, services. There'd be 1,000 dudes standing during the service, and not one guy is fucking singing. Am I allowed?
Oh.
Not one guy is singing, and I'm like, okay, then I've got to lift this. I've got to carry. I've got to sing for 1,000 people then, and I would sing as loud as I could, and like the amount of heads that would turn back to look to see who is singing. I just got such a kick out of that. Like, you could see like 20 or 30 rows down, like dudes turning their heads to be like, who is that? Who is this guy? We have to beat him up afterwards.
Yeah, he's singing. We don't like.
I'm like, it's quiet in here. There's 1,000 people, and like the only guy singing is the dude who's doing the solo on stage. Come on.
It's awkward.
Yeah.
Like, just sing. Yeah. Oh man.
Yeah, and I mean, no, it really was like, in a strange way, kind of a point of pride. And I was like, if I'm gonna do that, I better be good. So.
Yeah. And you are good.
Well, thank you. But I honed it. I practiced.
Yeah. Let's see. Now you know how I feel about practicing.
I wasn't. Yeah, I was only practicing on those Fridays. During those Friday services.
No, practicing is great. I don't know. I mean, whatever. But anyway, yeah. So, something that people wonder about a lot is how music therapy is paid for.
I was wondering that. Do you get paid?
And yes, so it's a full-time job. I think the average salary for a music therapist is like $50,000. Okay. So it's not not rich.
That's staying above water.
Certainly. But yeah, you're like surviving. And that's the average. I think like a lot of intro music therapists do not get paid a sustainable amount, and that's like kind of a whole thing, is because whatever. But I think especially in hospitals, like my professor, one of them was telling me that they're starting to invest more in music therapists because they're finding that it brings down their anxiety medication costs.
That is cool.
So
that is super cool.
They love that, and obviously that's really great for patients, and they love to see their patients like calmer without having to like load them. Anyway, so I think as it becomes more well known and as people take it more seriously, which is they should.
Yeah.
Music therapists are being paid like a sustainable amount. Obviously, like we don't have the expertise that doctors do. It makes sense that they're going to be paid more, right?
Right.
But it is more than just it's like it's a degree, and it's a board certification. It's not just nothing, So anyway, so people pay for it in 3 basic ways that I I guess 4 that I know of. And I know I already said I'm not an expert, but this is an area where I really am not an expert.
Okay.
But
as you've not yet been paid as a music therapist.
Yeah, I have not yet been paid for. Yeah, I'm not allowed to be paid. I have not board certified yet. So anyway, but insurance pays for it. I forget what it's under. But if it is deemed medically necessary or behaviorally necessary, insurance will pay for it in most cases. And the medically necessary piece, I tried to look up, like, how do you get it to be deemed, like, medically necessary? And I couldn't find information on that, but I know that behaviorally, or to get, at least for kids in school, like, the state to pay for it, you just have to prove that it improves, like, their health. So, like, you need to do, like, an assessment session where you assess, like, what they are working on and, like, why they were referred to music therapy, like,
Right.
and then you kind of, like, do a session, and then you record the data, like we were talking about earlier, and you just look at the numbers and see if they got better with the music or not. So I don't know if that is how you make it medically necessary for your insurance. I'm not sure. It's probably something like that. But yeah, I think it's hard to claim, like, just thinking of, like, how do you say that music therapy is medically necessary? Because no one's gonna die if they don't get music therapy, right? But it's like
it's about,
it can really, really help people.
yeah, well, it's about, like, you know, quality of life. And people talk about health span, or sorry,
Yeah.
people talk about lifespan, but there's also, like, health span, you know? And that seems like the kind of thing where, okay, yeah, you're not necessarily, maybe you're not providing emergency care, but it is improving people's lives to the point where they can actually live healthier for longer, right?
Yeah.
It sounds like to me.
Yeah, totally. I think it's like, even like talk therapy, like, unless it's a very specific situation, I think it's hard to claim that it's necessary. Like, that's a really tough word,
Yeah.
Because I think that there's always going to be people that are like, well, he would still be, like, alive. And so I think, if necessary to me means, like, keeping the patient alive. Whereas I think now, like, healthcare providers, at least in the last 20 years, have gone into the optimizing health rather than just, like,
Yeah. Well, yeah,
keeping
like,
people alive.
yeah, like you're saying, if you can provide music therapy in lieu of giving medication, surely that's going to be a better option most of the time.
Yeah, absolutely. So anyways, insurance pays for it, depending on the case. And this would be like in hospitals, hospice, psychiatric care, sometimes private practices, although one that I looked at said that sometimes it's more expensive than paying out of pocket, because there's something like, in order for the music therapist to actually make, like, a decent amount after you pay the insurance, like, they have to charge you, like, their full price, whereas the people that pay out of pocket, they charge them half the price or whatever. And then if you have a really high deductible, it doesn't really work out that you save that much money by using insurance, or you might actually spend more. So anyways, so some people, like a private practice, you might pay out of pocket, or if you're paying, like, a freelance, like the GIM therapist that I go to, I just pay her. Like,
Okay.
And then I believe organizations, like nonprofits, will, like, pay for, like, I think, like, you might have a substance abuse group or a women's group, or, like, some kind of community that, like, provides music therapy for itself. And then you have the state paying. So that's schools, I think, is pretty much the place where that would happen. And actually, not prisons, because I looked it up and was wondering, like, how do prisons pay for it? But prisons, it works similar to hospital, where you have to pay for your own healthcare or have insurance, and it's considered, like, under that umbrella.
As a prisoner?
Yeah, so as a prisoner, you all of your healthcare you have to pay for, or, like, have an insurance, which
What?
I don't know how that even works. Like, how do you even
Yeah.
make money if you're in prison? So I don't know. But
That's wow.
yeah, that's crazy to me. But yeah.
Do you
Um,
how if you don't mind me asking, how much do you pay
mm.
for your for your GIS? No. What
I
was it?
pay a
GIM?
GIM,
GIM.
guided imagery in music.
Yeah, yeah.
So I pay a discounted rate because I started going to her before. So she was board certified music therapist, right? But their GIM, you have to go through an entire other set of rigorous training, and I think it takes a couple years. Um, and so I was seeing her like towards the end of I think like her clinical work. So I think I might have been like, part of her practicum or something. I don't
Okay,
really
okay.
know how that works. But so I was paying I think $40 a session then. And also I think because she was giving like Appalachian students like a discount. And
Okay.
now that she's certified, I pay 50 a session,
It's reasonable.
which is like around I don't know I mean that's around like, a cheap therapist, like a talk therapist.
Yeah, yeah.
Um I pay more for my talk therapist than that. Um, and yeah, I think, if I hadn't have had all the like discounts and stuff, I'm not sure what it would cost. I did look, and the average cost for like a private music therapy session, according to Google, was like $110. But I have no idea what that even means because is that for like what population is that for? Like I don't really
Yeah.
know. I guess it could be the same cost for, but
Yeah. I mean, is it
yeah.
the case that that music therapists kind of operate some music therapists would operate along the same lines as some talk therapists where you have like sliding scale or things like that?
I guess so. Probably. I'm not sure. I think that when you get into like the freelance, that's probably like up to the
Right.
individual.
Right, right.
There are like companies, so like private practices, I guess is what I would call them, like um that they have like music therapists that go out to people or
Mm.
people come to them. So it's like a music therapy company that you work for.
Ah.
And I'm sure they have set rates for those. So, um how are you doing? I was going to talk a little bit about the history of music therapy.
Yeah, let's go. Let's keep it rolling.
Okay. Okay, so there is another misconception is that music therapy is like brand new and just showed up like 20 years ago, which is like it is technically as a profession um is new. Um but in some ways like music therapy has existed since like ancient times without, like the board certification and all of that.
Right.
Um like I mean, like we have recordings of healing rituals using music in virtually every culture. And like a lot of cultures, especially ancient ones, like the healer in the group is the musician.
Yeah.
And like a lot of rhythm and chant to heal people. And actually in ancient Egypt, we have the earliest treatise on medical practice in 1850 BC, which is the Kahun Papyrus. And guess what it mentions? That's right,
What does it
it's
mention?
chant.
Chant.
Yes, so
And
stuck on that.
uh that's not part of the therapy though, right?
So yeah, and
Okay.
but anyway, so like it's existed for a really long time, and like we've kind of seen it pop up like here and there in medical history, and then
Yeah.
but I think the music therapy that we kind of know and love, and the like the structured profession of it came in the 1900s, and I guess specifically 1950 is the year that the National Association for Music Therapy was organized. So, but like, I think, I believe like a big influence on it was like World War II. people, I think especially women, would go sing to like soldiers in the hospital, and they were finding like not only was it nice, but it improved people's vitals.
Oh wow.
And yeah, which I've seen that happen before. Just by the way, a quick aside, it was like a kid in a hospital. He'd been abused and he was very agitated, very like all over the place when we came in. And like I watched this excellent music therapist like just do her thing, and like I watched his heartbeat calm down, and I watched it, and then he like went to sleep at the end of our. Anyways, so that was really cool.
That's amazing.
Um. Anyways, then we have like founding ladies. So there is technically like a guy that we call like the father of music therapy, um, which he kind of, I mean, he did do a lot for music therapy. He's E. Thayer Gaston, I don't know. And he advocated for the scientific study of music's impact on health and established academic programs. And I think because he was a man, he was maybe able to go a little bit further than the ladies in the early 1900s were able to. So he's the father of music therapy, and then there's several mothers. Ava Vesilius founded the National Therapeutic Society of New York in 1903, and that included music in the medical practice. Margaret Anderton taught the first university course for music therapy at Columbia in 1919.
Whoa.
Yeah.
1919?
And then we have, yeah. And then we have Isa Maud Ilson and Harriet Seymour. Yeah, so Harriet Seymour was one that worked with actually World War I soldiers, and yeah, helped bring music therapy to the medical setting. And so then, like in the 1950s, we have, I guess, E. Thayer Gaston, our father of music therapy. He like established the first internship and edited the first textbook for music and therapy. And I'm not sure if he was involved in the organization of the National Association for Music Therapy, which was like the first like organized group, I guess, that set education and clinical training standards. And then they had standards of certification. So before it was like, you know, we didn't really have like a certification or anything. Like people were seeing its effect, but there wasn't like technically like qualifications. Like anybody could just go do it, you know. And then there was kind of a different group organized in 1971 at the time called Urban Federation of Music Therapists, and then I guess later they became the American Association for Music Therapy. And they were more focused on mental health issues, whereas the other group was focused more on intellectual disabilities. So, but it was kind of like a bit awkward to have both of them because I think they both had different standards of certification, I believe. So eventually we got the Certification Board for Music Therapists, which was independent of either association, and they implemented the board certification in 1985, and they provide the national certification to people who pass the test. And then in 1998, we just married the two. So we have what we still have is the American Music Therapy Association. So yeah, so now they got rid of like the old certifications that they used to give out, and now it's just MT-BC, which is what I will get hopefully in a year.
Excellent.
So that's, yeah, kind of the quick and dirty story.
Yes. Well, so music therapy has sort of both a historical tradition, I mean, you know, found on some papyrus in 1850 BC, and many other cultures, obviously, like you said, probably all other cultures have some kind of tradition of musical healing, you know, why is it, do you think, that now as a music therapist student you're being taught, or that the feeling is that you have to defend what you do? Like, where does that disconnect happen?
I think it's because we're like, um, I think it's because of the way that we view music, maybe. Like, I think we forget that music is not just an art, but also um, a science and a personal
Mm.
thing, and it can be clinical too. And I think it's kind of hard to enter into the boys' club of like medicine. I think,
Yeah.
and it's not really like doctors themselves. Like they seem to be like super on board. They're like, hell yeah, you're like making our patients feel better. They're like wonderful to work with. Um, I think it's like, I don't know, just kind of the general masses, I suppose. Like, just I think like people don't know
Yeah.
about it, and then when you put it as like, yeah, we work in hospitals, people are like, what are you doing there? Like, are you just? And I think when people think it's just singing songs for people, you know,
Yeah.
obviously that is a little bit like, oh my god, what? That's a job? You just go sing songs. Um, so I think that's kind of why maybe I think it sounds too fun to be a real job,
Yeah.
maybe, to people.
I get the impression that it's, I don't know that
Mm.
fun would be the right word. I get the impression that it's, I think rewarding, but it sounds
It
extremely
is,
challenging.
honestly, it is fun. I was actually telling my friend earlier because she's had a practicum at the adult psychiatric hospital that I was at last semester, and I was like, oh my god, that side is so
Mhm.
fun. And then I was like, well, maybe fun's not the right word, but it was definitely a great experience. But honestly, fun I think is the right word. Like it was it was challenging and it was rewarding and it brought me joy and it was fun. Um
Well, that's even better then. That's even better. And if you're having fun, of course I'm sure
yeah.
that's going to make the
With that
experience
side,
so much
yeah, with
better
that
for the
side too,
client.
like I think I mean I definitely went in with like preconceptions of like, okay, this is going to be like super intense and heavy stuff. And sometimes it was, for sure. Um but we would always give them like choices of what they wanted to do, and we usually had like things that were more deep and getting into their coping skills or whatever they were working through, and then things that were more fun and like more about social or like just challenging different parts of them. And like for the first couple of weeks
Mm.
they always chose the fun thing. I think they were tired. They go to
Right.
like, at least this site, they're in other therapies all day. And then they go to music therapy and it's just a chance to like dance or write songs or do something fun. And so sometimes it was really like a lot
Yeah.
of fun because we would just do like fun stuff. It was actually super awkward because we made the mistake of like the first couple of like for several weeks in a row it was like always just like a fun group that wanted to do like fun silly stuff. And so then like we brought in a bunch of fun silly stuff and we had kind of not brought as much deeper things as normal because we were kind of expecting that to happen again. And then we walk in and it's a group of all like women who I think, I don't know, several of them had been abused, and it was just like you could feel the vibe in there was like, okay, we're not going to be doing like a riff off from Pitch Perfect today. I was like, oh, okay, right. And like, I don't know. So yeah, definitely that was like a, but I mean, we had other stuff that we could do too. And we kind of read the room immediately and we're like, okay, we're going to not do the stuff we had planned. But I think that's kind of a funny story.
Yeah, well, yeah, I mean, that speaks to the reflexivity,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Oh yeah. Oh.
To bring it all the way back.
Oh, all the way back. Well, the only things I have, I mean, I was going to talk about some like average experiences or like things that we've done in music therapy to kind of give you a better idea, and then tell you some like cute little anecdotes of like things that have happened, like the one I just did, I guess. How are you doing? Do you
Yeah.
need to leave?
No, I'm good. I'm good. I'm good.
Okay.
I think we're at, what, almost 2 hours now?
Yeah, but we'll cut it down. We'll cut it down. So some I just came up with a couple of like examples. So I have some psych hospital examples, I have some kids with intellectual disabilities examples, and I have some memory care samples. Which one do you want to hear first?
I'm really curious about the memory.
Okay.
Like, yeah, I mean, my grandma had Alzheimer's, and they had a very hard time. It's just a very difficult disease, and it's really hard to get help. To get help. I mean, my dad was flying. They were in New Jersey, and my dad was spending 2 or 3 weeks out of the month, like up in New Jersey, taking care of her because. Yeah. Anyway, so I'd be curious to hear about, yeah, those kind of experiences.
Actually, my grandma has Alzheimer's too, and it's definitely like, because the thing about Alzheimer's is the brain shrinks. Like, I mean, I'm sure you know this because you study this, but like, I don't know that everyone knows that like your like brain cells die and your brain gets smaller, and there are just chasms in your brain where there used to be like not. And if you'll remember, music gets around the whole thing. And I think this is an area where it's very easy to sell music therapy because you can see how well it works so quickly, and like so immediately. Like, music is like one of the last things that goes when somebody loses their memory. Like, I mean, I've seen people who can't name their spouse sing all of the words to a very complicated church song that they learned in their youth, And it's just because it's stored in a different place, and it's also stored in several. Like, it's just kind of, it takes over. Because if you think about it, it's language, it's sound, it's memory, and
and it's got to be tied to the physical place, the time. Anyway.
Yeah, I actually have like a list of like places where in your brain like music activates, and it's the corpus callosum, the motor cortex, the prefrontal cortex, the nucleus accumbens and amygdala, the sensory cortex, auditory cortex, obviously, the hippocampus, visual cortex, and the cerebellum. So, anyways.
All the corpuses
and the bellums. So, yeah, and I definitely like, this is an area where like I've heard so many stories of people being like, I don't know, just it's amazing to watch somebody like communicate through music when they've lost other communication skills. And like, this is, I worked at memory care facility this last semester, and funny story, I guess, is there were like 20 people-ish probably in the group, and we have to pick 2 people as students to like follow and set goals for and collect data on. And I picked the only 2 that died.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So, but, and for a little while, I felt a little weird. Like, I felt a little cursed, honestly. I was like, did I kill them? Like, why is it that I keep choosing people? Because it was like one died and then like the other did. And I was like, oh my God, what's wrong?
Yeah. Well, I'm sure it was not your doing, but. Sorry.
No, but it did feel kind of like my supervisor helped me like think of it more as like a maybe it's a good thing that you chose those two specifically.
Mm.
Like you spent extra time on them.
Yeah.
Um, anyway, but one of them, uh, we don't say like client names. So at app, at least we just say like the first letter of their name. So L was a lady that I worked with, and she was completely nonverbal when I met her. She had Alzheimer's, and but she like when I would play the guitar, she would look at it, and so she didn't really like. Sometimes she would I guess vocalize, like she'd make like noises and things like when
Mm.
she got excited, but she didn't say words. So but when I brought out like the guitar, she would always look at the guitar and like smile, and then I would bring it to her, and um uh, especially like when I was doing like finger picking, like strumming was fine or whatever, but finger picking like that, she would just like look right at the guitar, like laser focus. um and yeah, and we sang like Amazing Grace with her, and I don't know, like other church songs and songs from like her generation. And I believe my goal for her was I can't really remember. I think I wanted to get her to do like a vocalization like once or twice per session.
Yeah.
And so I would try to like get her excited and get her to like respond to me. Um and she did some and sometimes no, and um yeah. So that was her. And then uh there was just a whole group of them. And then of course my other client was wonderful too, and we did all sorts of things with him, and he was a classical musician, and so we would bring in a lot of classical music. And like when he spoke, he would you'd ask him a question and his answer would make sense at first, and then he would just keep going and going, and then it would kind of be like unrelated things or words that sounded kind of like the words that he wanted to say but weren't the right word, if you know what I mean. Like
Yeah.
they're called loose associations, and you see that with sometimes patients experiencing psychosis. You see that sometimes too. um so anyways, yeah, but we would bring out classical music and he would immediately hum along and then tell us about his mother, who was a pianist, and how she was gonna come see him later today. And anyway, so yeah, we do a lot of playing songs from their youth or their preferred music and then asking them about it, which can prompt like stories or memories they have with that music. And then we sometimes play like partnered instruments, so like one of them holds the drum and the other holds the mallet, to get them to be social with each other, because I think it's really easy for them to only ever interact with like staff there.
Right.
And then sometimes we would teach them like a brief thing, like usually with the classical music we'd bring in like a different instrument. Like I sometimes brought my horn in, and so we'd be like, this is a French horn, and then we'd play the song, and then afterwards we'd be like, what is this instrument, and like see if anybody knew. So yeah, that's sort of some of the things we did in memory care, and a lot of like exercise songs too. Like These Boots Were Made for Walking is a big one, because you like kick in your chair.
Yeah.
Or like musical games, that sort of thing. And then kids with intellectual disabilities, very similar. I only talk about the kids because we do similar experiences with the adults too. It's just that you never use children's music with adults. That's just like a thing. You
Yeah.
can like, yeah. Because there are some adults that are like learning skills that maybe you learned when you were 8 years old, but instead of using songs that helped you learn it when you were 8, like we need songs that are like appropriate for someone at a different age. You know what I mean? To
Yeah.
teach the same
Yeah.
skill. So that's like that would be, I guess, the biggest difference. And I guess there are like different things adults are learning. Like they're learning more life skills but anyway. So some of the things we did with the kids was songs about whatever they're learning in school, so just like reinforcing like, you know, math class or something with music. Emotional recognition um is a big one for kids with autism, of course. We have a feelings
Mm-hmm.
board, which just was a board with like a bunch of faces on it, and then like this was our hello song for this group, and we'd ask them like how they're doing today, and they'd point to one, and then we'd play music that sounded like that, and so they always thought that was so silly. And I had one kid who, like, the beginning of the semester, he didn't even want to choose a thing. He didn't like feelings at all. He didn't want to talk about his feelings. He did not want to choose anything on the feelings board. He would ask us to skip him. Or if we, like, kind of pushed him to choose something, he would choose the, like, sick one and say that his stomach hurt, because I think he was getting anxious.
Mm.
And then, like, towards the middle of the semester, he would start to choose, like, silly ones. Like, I think he would just choose feelings that he wasn't necessarily feeling, but things to get us to play, like, in that way, because we would,
Yeah.
like, if somebody was feeling crazy, we would play crazy, and then you'd get to dance crazy or whatever. I don't think crazy was on there, because, well, anyway, but, you know, that sort of
yeah, it seems problematic.
it's really cute.
Okay.
Yeah. But we'd always pick whatever he chose, you know, and we would just, like, take his word for it. And then, like, towards the end of the semester, I watched him, like, really think about it, and then, like, choose ones that I think he, like, really felt. And so that was, like, cool. We do calming strategies. Deep breaths are a big one.
Yeah.
To get them to chill out, because they've got so much energy. Peer interaction, socializing is kind of hard. For everybody, honestly, but especially kids with intellectual disabilities and developmental delays. Music making, to help them, like, follow directions, like, you know, teaching them an instrument and being like, okay, we're gonna play it this time, and you can't play it now, and whatever.
Yeah.
Sharing instruments, waiting their turn to play instruments, or, you know, do whatever we're doing, and then listening to each other and, like, making choices. Those are the sorts of things we would do. In the psych hospital, we did Mad Libs songwriting was a big hit with some of the groups. So this group, it was different people every week. I guess I should have specified that earlier at the psych hospital.
Okay.
Because they would stay for 3 to 7 days. So
Right. Okay.
we wouldn't follow individual people. We would, like, just pick new people to, like, write notes on every week. But there were several groups that really liked Mad Libs songwriting. So we would have, like, the bones of a song, kind of, and then have, like, a when I feel blank, I blank coping skill, you know?
Yeah.
Or, and then we'd kind of be like, well, what kind of sound do you want it to? Do you want it to sound sad or, like, melancholy? And then we'd kind of, like, offer chords to them. And then we'd be like, well, what instruments do we need for the song? And then they could play them. Sometimes we would do improvisation. So actually, after Hurricane Helene, we had a very powerful experience where we brought in a bunch of instruments and we talked about the sounds of the hurricane and the flooding. And a lot of people there had been displaced there, or, like, suddenly homeless, and then, like, went to the psych hospital, like, I think maybe because of the hurricane or, like, directly after it. And so we had a bunch of instruments, and we had, like, a whiteboard, and I drew, like, a kind of a bell curve on the board. And so we were like, what happens, like, kind of at the beginning of the storm? Like, what sounds, like, maybe wind and, like, rain, and then as the bell curve goes up, like, what sounds are here, you know, and what sounds are, like, towards the end.
Mm-hmm.
And then we were like, well, what instrument might represent that sound? And then, well, who wants to, like, represent the rain for us, and who wants to be whatever? And then we improvised, like, the hurricane, and that was, I don't know, it was very beautiful. And we talked about it after, and it was emotional, and I think cathartic, maybe, for some of the people. It seemed to, I don't know, they told me it helped them, so I think that it did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. How often are you doing things like that where you are, I don't know, it's maybe, like, less musical and more, I don't know, that's almost like a sound design. I mean, that's not quite the right term for it, but, you know, but you're trying to evoke some kind of feeling, not necessarily from like an organized musical piece, but like from a more, yeah. I don't know how to finish that thought exactly, but
I guess I would call it like an improvisation rather than like a song that you know has a beginning and an end, and like kind of what's going on with the song.
yeah.
I think we do tons of improvisation, especially at that site. I brought it in a lot. And honestly, like it's a good one with nonverbal clients, especially like people who express their emotions differently. Like I'm thinking autism. I've read research about people like kind of meeting their expressions or their verbalizations with like, I guess, vocalizations, right? Because it's not words. With like music and like matching their stimming patterns or whatever, and like improvising with them. And then so like instead of having like a talking conversation, they're having like a musical conversation, if that makes sense. And we do all sorts of improvisation, like some more organized than others. Like sometimes it is just like you start playing something to whatever somebody else is doing, and sometimes it's like the hurricane thing where it's like we're picking out the sounds and like we know that it's going to be the hurricane.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like a really powerful technique. I mean, well, I don't know. I'm
It is powerful. Thank you.
Yeah.
They're actually like, I think Nordhoff Robbins is like, that's like a approach to music therapy, and I believe they're big on like improvisation. That's pretty much all I know. Well, I know more about it, but that's like off the dome, I guess.
Yeah, there's some, I mean.
So anyways, what? No, go.
Oh, well, just saying that, yeah, tapping into that improvisational, does like that improvisational thing that, I guess, I don't know. I don't want to go back to it just reminds me of the book that I mentioned at the beginning, Free Play. It's like, there is something, just kind of creating something, like pulling something out of the moment. I mean, music is one of the, when that thing is music, when you create some musical moment out of sort of thin air, out of sort of the feeling that's in the room, I just think that could be so magical. Like I've just been surprised so many times playing music by what happens in an improvisational setting, and the surprise is really cathartic.
For sure. And that's why like music therapists have to be excellent musicians. Like you have to be able to improvise, and you have to be able to like match like people's moods and expressions, and then you also have to like design experiences that make music accessible to people who may not read music or may not like physically be capable of playing instruments like the way that they exist right now. Like you may be adapting things, and you have to kind of, you're the expert in music in the situation,
Yeah,
and you're
like a translator
bending music to your will. Yeah, exactly. So we would also do lyric analysis, sometimes with drawing. This was like my friend Johnny, shout out Johnny, her like I guess idea, I think, was we would give them like paper, and then we'd sing a song live for them, and then they could either like draw or like look at the lyric sheet and like circle words that meant something to them, and then we could talk about the drawings. And like we had some very interesting drawings. We had a client who drew, I believe, her own funeral, and I don't know, then we talked about that. And sometimes we'll do more silly fun things, like I said. Like another Johnny idea was human bop it. So like some of the room had like cabasas, which if you don't know, it's like an instrument that you like twist. And then some of the room had like drums, and then some people were singers, and some people were like shimmiers. And so we would like kind of keep a steady beat, and then somebody would get to like play the or like demand what the group did. So it would be like bop it, sing it. Anyway. And then we would do like dancing, group singing, writing songs together. And a lot of times we'd like put them in groups to like get them to again to like socialize with each other. So it did end up being a lot of fun. Like you wouldn't necessarily think that site would be like happy rainbows all the time. And it certainly wasn't, but honestly, I saw some really beautiful things and it was fun.
Yeah, I mean.
So, yeah. Now I have some like little golden nuggets is what we call them at app. I don't know if other music therapists call it that, but just like cute little anecdotes, um, things that I've seen. I've seen two nonverbal people sing in my time.
That's pretty amazing. I mean,
it was gorgeous. Yeah. Both of them, it was like a really repetitive song that we had sung several times for whatever reason. Like one, it was Amazing Grace, and then the other was like our hello song that we did. And the Amazing Grace one, like we had sung, that was one where we were like complimenting each other. So we would say like, amazing Will, how sweet the sound. Will is a wonderful singer. And then, you know, we'd do it to like everybody in the room. And then, but I like looked this person in the eye, and I guess the last word of Amazing Grace, it saved a wretch like me. And I did not expect her to do this, but everybody in the room was singing. We were like, saved a wretch, and then she said me. And her age next to her was like, did anybody else see that she sang? And it was like, I don't know, what a rush. And then the other one was in the memory care side, and she was definitely verbal. She would say things, they just didn't make sense. So it was like, I don't know if this is the polite term, but like word salad.
Okay. Yeah.
Just like words, and like it definitely made sense to her, but like what she was saying didn't come out. Like, and it was fluent. It'd be like apple pizza tomorrow going,
Right.
that sort of thing. So, but then I saw her like sing in time, like the last word of one of the songs we were singing. And that was just like, I was like, oh my God. And then we've also had people like complain when we end sessions. They're like, what, you're leaving? Which is just nice to see.
Yeah.
And then one of my favorite, I guess, clients is like somebody who I wasn't even the practicum student for. I was just shadowing, and I may have told you about this, but like it was an older adult site, but it wasn't memory care. It was just older adults. But this person did have a memory needs.
Mm-hmm.
So, but like I go in for the first time, and I meet this person, and he shakes my hand, and I'm wearing like rings, and he was like, "Are you married?" And I was like, "No." And he was like, "Oh." And then he looked at my hair, and I have red hair, and so do you actually.
Mm-hmm, but don't, all right.
Oh, okay, don't be spreading that around. Sorry.
Well, now people, now, sorry, go on.
Oh, now people are gonna know. Okay, you dye your hair red.
It's just.
Anyway.
Sorry, go on.
Well, anyway, he saw my hair and he was like, "Are you Irish?" And I was like, "No, not really, actually. I'm like, I'm just kind of a mutt. Honestly, I'm more Swedish than any other thing." And he gave me like a big rant about how I am Irish, in fact. And then he was just, it was really nice. And then the next week I met him, and he grabbed my hand, and he looked at my rings, and he said if I was married, and I was like, no. And he was like, oh. And then he was like, are you Irish? And I was like, I am. How did you know that? And then he held my hands, and he sang When Irish Eyes Are Smiling to me, but I didn't know the words. And so eventually I learned the words, because we did this routine every week.
Yeah.
And, I know. And then I eventually learned, like, he had, like, a sweetheart. I don't know if he ever called her like his wife.
Mm.
I'm not sure what she was to him, but you know, when he'd ask me if I was married, I'd be like, well, what about what's her name? And he'd be like, ah. And I
Oh,
don't know, but it wasn't like, I don't know how to, he didn't give creepy old man, if that makes any sense. Like it was just like a sweet, like I think there are some older men from that generation who just flirt like for the fun of it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like I think that's just part of his personality is to just flirt with everybody.
Yeah, they're
And
just making conversation. That just happens to be their
yeah, it's
flavor.
just being
Yeah.
silly.
Yeah.
Yeah. And he was just so silly and he was really great. Um and then another little silly story I have is at the memory care site. We get there and this was like the session from hell. Like everything that I had learned about that could go wrong in this population like went wrong. Like I get there and there's this lady in the hallway and I'm like, "Hey," and she had been with us for the session before. So I was like, "Oh, we're doing music therapy if you want to come join." And she was like, "I am not doing music therapy. My mother is either dying or already dead and I need to get out of here." And I'm like, "Okay." So I'm doing like every trick I know in the book, being like, "Oh my God, that I'm validating her feelings, you know?" And I'm being like, "That sounds really difficult." And she's like, "I need to get out." And I'm like, kind of like trying to get the nurse to come over. And she's pulling out like her license and her registration to show to me.
Yeah.
And I'm like, this is really tough. Like, I'm sorry that I don't know. And I'm doing my best, but I'm also panicking, to be honest with you. And um, anyway, I get the nurse, and the nurse is like, she does that sometimes. And I was like, okay, well, that's helpful. So then I get like my supervisor, and my supervisor goes and helps her. But my supervisor had been trying to help this other lady who was like, I need help. I need to get out of here. Like another lady was saying that. And she was in a wheelchair. And she was upset because the lady next to her at her table, also in a wheelchair, was sleeping. So she was like, "This woman is sleeping. I mean, we're at the table and she's sleeping. I need her to be moved." And so we kind of are like, okay. And so we try to like the other lady, we wake her up just enough to like to move her. And when we wake her up, she's like, "I don't want to move. I'm sitting right." And then she like immediately goes back to sleep. And so the original lady, we try to move her and she's like, "I don't want to move. Like this lady is sleeping." And so we just leave them both there and she's still complaining. And of course, the memory is not there. So she complains about it constantly because it's a constant new problem to her. Um, and, but eventually like we just have to start the session like, and my supervisor's still out like helping the woman in the hallway. And so I should also mention that they had had s'mores before this, which was very adorable and sweet. And so they were all sticky.
Oh my
God. And so we're doing the session, and the entire first half of the session, the one lady is yelling at us from the back, going like, "She's sleeping. I need help. This woman is sleeping." And then she would like look at us and be like, "I'm looking at you and you're not helping me. I'm in dire need. I'm in danger." And yeah, and it should be like, "I need help and you guys are singing."
Oh my God.
Which definitely, yeah, I was like, "Ooh." And oh man, we did our best, but like we were having to focus on like 20 other people, you know. And also it hadn't started to smell this way when we had come in, but definitely like while we were doing the session, like somebody had been cooking something in their pants, if you know what I'm saying.
Oh.
So there was a definite poo aroma.
This is I mean just pure chaos.
Yeah. So it smells horrible. We're getting yelled at. Whatever. And I do this one experience where like we kind of like go up to each person individually, and I think we were singing Amazing Grace. That's a big hit. And I'm like holding this one lady's hand and singing to her, and it's actually very beautiful. And we're smiling and singing together. And then I pull my hand away, and my hand is brown. And I about jumped 6 feet in the air and quit on the spot. But luckily, in that moment, I remembered the s'mores.
Oh, God.
So
Okay.
thankfully, it had been her s'more. But I, like, freaked.
Oh.
But I did not hold anybody else's hand.
Yeah, what's the lesson there?
Oh, God. The lesson is that sometimes everything goes wrong, and it's okay.
Sometimes shit is really a s'more.
Yeah, sometimes shit is really a s'more. And the last, like, little golden nugget I have is before I even studied music therapy, I was shadowing a music therapist in, like, the Fort Worth area, and she worked with adults with intellectual and developmental delays, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
And there was one client, and she was, she was just so wonderful, and I think she was about my age. Blind and nonverbal. And I guess the music therapist had told me that she started with this client since the girl was like 2. And apparently she was like not reacting to like anything. And so she started by having like a button next to her face that would like play a sound. And sometimes the girl would just like accidentally hit it. But she would always make the music like happen when the button went. And so then eventually I think she figured out like the button makes the music go, and
Okay.
then from there, like literally since she was 2 until she's like, when I met her, she was like 23, building all sorts of skills that way. Just very micro, and the skill that I watched her work on that summer that I shadowed her was saying I love you to her family members.
Oh my God.
Which is just so beautiful. So the music therapist had like a soundboard, basically, like a little, I don't know, rectangular box with a bunch of buttons on it. And she had made like textured buttons on the tops of all of them. So like one of them had like, I think like Velcro on it or something. And then one of them had like a dice, like a die on it, like a 6-sided die. And then she had recorded all of the family members saying their own names, including, or I guess somebody said it for them, like the cat, I believe. And so, and then she had this song that was like, a song like, we love you, whatever, like, I just want to say I love you. And then there'd be like a pause for her to like press the button of the person. And so at the beginning of the summer, the music therapist had to like really kind of like push her to press the button. Like she would kind of basically press the button for her with her hand.
Yeah.
And then, over time I kind of watched her, like when the song happened, she would start to reach for the buttons herself. And then by the end of the summer, she would press the button by herself, realize that we had already said that person's name, and then like search, with her hand, like feel around and pick a different button. And I don't know, that was just like so much growth, and like you don't always see that, and what a beautiful thing to like help somebody do,
And to know that there are some cases where it can really, really work like that it can just happen like that.
Yeah. So I think
inspiring, Sally, seriously. I mean,
I know, I freaking love this stuff so much.
It sounds trite, for me to just be like, oh, that's amazing. But like,
yeah, it's hard to explain, right? Like how amazing it takes, over 2 hours, I guess. I think that music therapy is headed in a good direction. I think right now it's a little bit tough because, like I said, we have to advocate so hard for it. And say that it's not just like fun or music class, and that it's different from music education. And I think that sometimes we can forget that it can just be fun.
Yeah.
I think sometimes we get so caught up in being like, it's empirical and it's research based and it's peer reviewed. You know what? What if we do just sing a song? Like, what about that? That is therapeutic, and we have research to back that, whatever. I think people are pleased with how it's helping their patients and their family members, and I think it's only going to get bigger. So now I have our ending question that I'm going to ask every episode,
Okay.
which is, if you had to split your life into the before and the after, what is the moment that it switches, and how specific is the moment? Is it like a couple minutes? Is it like a couple years?
You know, I think if there's a moment or a time period where I felt myself transform the most, is that kind of the heart of the question? Is that
I think yeah, I think so. I guess it's like an event in your life that you can measure time with. Like,
mm.
oh, that was before this thing happened.
Yeah, well, this is, I guess, not a very pleasant one, but the thing that comes to mind most instantly is I mean, a specific evening in February of 2020, and it has nothing to do with the pandemic, so you know, but I just difficult to sum up, but it was a period of a few months leading up to that night where I was really in my head and really living in my head, and kind of the culmination of that was that on this night I just had like a pretty severe panic attack, followed by a few months of like real terrible depressive episode. And in some ways, I mean, I think I could, in some ways I would even say that I'm still sort of on the way out of that.
Mm-hmm.
But the transformative part of that for me mostly was that I had to like relearn how to speak to myself about myself. And that takes a lot of practice, I think. And it was something that when I was younger came a lot easier to me, and then, you know, high school and college, and wanting to succeed and wanting to be as good as you can. And I really resonate with what you were saying earlier about how you you know, you didn't necessarily like what was being told to you about like you're always getting better. Yeah, because I think that was the mindset that I fell into, where it's like I need to like squeeze, you know, as much efficiency as possible out of my life, and I need to, you know, I'm gonna die one day, so I gotta make every second count. And I think over time that just kind of began to wear on me, and as I look back on that, I think I have made a lot of strides to, yes, be present, and yes, try to find, you know, the good moments in every day, but be much less concerned with, you know, what am I achieving on a daily basis, and am I gonna get to this, you know, amorphous goal? Am I gonna get to some high place where I'm the best version of myself? Am I gonna successfully self-actualize? Yeah, maybe.
Is that how you talk to yourself now? Like you said, you retrained.
Yeah, I think I just my self-talk now is centered around, you know, being kind and patient to myself, and not and accepting my trying to roll with the punches, you know. And we're the way we feel is often only that, you know, it's only the way we feel. And you can really get yourself in trouble if you try to dissect those feelings too much. And I know, you know, you're talking about your music therapy, and I think there's a distinction between understanding, recognizing, noticing, being mindful of your feelings, and trying to actually dissect them and figure out, you know, how do I correct them? How do I eliminate them? Eliminate them? I mean, there's a difference between being aware of them and wanting to, and judging them, basically, right? Like, that's a fine line.
That's something like I learned just because I took a GIM course, and like, because I don't know, I was curious about like, well, do you have to talk through the imagery after? And they were like, you can, but you really don't have to. Like, you don't have to understand why you saw certain images when you listen to music. Like, your psyche is like figuring it out when you give it the space to like do the processing it needs to do. That's the work. You don't have to. And I think, you know, like a lot of people, I had a and have a habit of like intellectualizing and like they're being myself and being like, well, I know what the problem is, so it's not a problem.
Right.
And like when they were like, you don't have to know what it is, I was like, what do you mean? Like, that's what therapy is.
Right.
And but it's not. Like, you really don't have to understand the like what work is being done for it to work. I don't know if that makes sense.
No, it makes perfect sense, right? Like, if you identify patterns of thinking as problems, and maybe they do cause problems in your life, but if you say, I have this pattern of thinking, or I have this sort of fixation, and you're kind of constantly telling yourself, oh, this is what's wrong with me, this is what's wrong with me. I mean, you're signaling to yourself subconsciously and consciously over and over again that there's something wrong with you, and that there's a problem, and I think over time, if you allow yourself to kind of internalize that there's something wrong with you, then, you know, that will start to manifest itself in strange ways.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's it.
Hard
to strike a balance there. Yeah.
It is, for sure. I think my life splitting moment is when I stopped student teaching, and I can get specific into the very seconds that it happened, which is that my friend Brandon, shout out Brandon, was staying at my apartment at the time because he was like lease ended, and then the new one was like anyway, and I was so overworked, which it's not that they overworked me, it's that I wanted to impress them so bad, and I wanted to like it so bad that I just worked way too hard. And I don't know that I had gone to the bathroom like the whole day.
Oh God.
And I started crying, like I said, and it was, this is honestly a whole episode, but the exact moment, I think I had come home, and it took me a while to get home because I got lost, because I was so like worked up with this whole thing that like I was having like little memory problems, like couldn't find my keys ever, and I couldn't remember the way home and that sort of thing. And I like got home, and Brandon was on the couch, and I dropped my bag, and I just looked at him and I said, I have to pee so bad. And I like fell to the floor and was just crying. He was like, okay, let's go then. And then like, you know, I went, and then I believe we watched Don't Worry Darling, or at least part of it. And I just kept crying. I'm not sure if I slept or not. Like, honestly, it was all a blur, and I believe I stopped crying like in the afternoon of the next day. So that was for me like the turning point. And yeah, definitely am in a much better place now. And music student teaching is not for the faint of heart, let me tell you.
I don't doubt it for a second. Teaching in yeah, it's a terrible state of affairs for teachers right now.
Yeah. Well,
but you know what, Sally?
There we go. That's
in the spirit of music therapy, thank you so much for sharing.
Oh God, yes, of course. Thanks for listening.
Yeah.
There we go. That's everything you'll ever need to know about music therapy. This is a one and done source. You don't need to research anybody else.
Yeah, and this is also a good source to hear me say yeah like 150 times.
Hey, I told you I wanted the verbal nodding. That's like exactly, it's helpful.
But I really did enjoy it. And I thank you for thanks for asking me to do this. This is fun.
Oh my God, yeah. You should come back, and you'll be in the hot seat next time.
Oh my God.
So that was our episode on music therapy. I know I made a joke about it, but this should not be your final source for music therapy if you're interested in it. There are definitely more qualified people who talked about it than I did, and you should look into it. And I have research that I can turn you to if you're curious about that. If you liked this podcast, make yourself an ISO principle playlist and beat on a drum to get your feelings out and write yourself a song and eat ice cream. Bye.